שלום לכם, אחים ואחיות יקרים, אנחנו ממשיכים את סדרת המסרים שלנו בנושא של אחרית הימים,
the latter days, the signs of the latter days. Yesterday we spoke about the gathering of the people of Israel from all the nations. We saw several prophecies in the Bible that talk about that this will happen in the latter days. We will today turn to another prophecy, the prophecy about Gog and Magog, in Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39. We will not read the entire prophecy, but in chapter 38, we have several descriptions and exact details that have been given to us and that match the exact situation that we live in today, the political reality of the world and the Middle East that we live in today. And it's amazing that a prophecy from 2,500 years ago is coming true, coming to life right in front of our eyes in this time that we live in. I want to show you several points, several details. If so, Ezekiel chapter 38, in this chapter that describes Gog that will come to war against us, it says in verse 5, the countries that will join him are mentioned. It's Persia, Cush, and Put. 3 countries that I mentioned. Persia is Iran of today. We know that Iran is being ruled by extreme Shiites, and it has committed to destroy Israel completely. We are the only country, the only nation on earth that is under threat of complete destruction by Iran. Cush is the area of Sudan in the north of Africa, and North Sudan is a Muslim country. It is hostile, and weapon from Persia goes through the deserts of Sudan to Sinai, and from Sinai to Gaza Strip to fight against us. According to foreign news reports, Israel has bombed convoys of weapons in Sudan. And Put is the biblical name for Libya. And Libya is also a Muslim country, and it has many terror organizations that are fighting against each other. And also from there, weapons from Libya has gone to Sinai and to the Gaza Strip. So these countries are mentioned. There are 3 of them are hostile, and they're Muslim countries. And 2,500 years ago, this has been said. And in verse 6, Gomer is mentioned, and all his hordes, and the house of Tolgama, in the uttermost parts of the north, and all his hordes, and even many people with thee. So with Gog, these countries, these areas that are mentioned here, join him. And all these areas can be put under the title of Turkey of today. And these are areas that in the biblical times they lived between the Caspian and the Black Sea. And this is the southern border of Russia of today. From there on, they spread out. These names, these peoples, they went towards Europe and they spread out. And therefore, it is very difficult to determine and to define who this is referring to. But it is clear that this entire area of Turkey and also Erdogan is very much against us. I don't know if he will be in power when this war will break out and the prophecy will come true, but maybe. This war is very close. And Erdogan also has said that he needs to join forces with Iran against Israel. And he has had meetings, and Putin and Erdogan and the Iranians have met together, and they also practiced in the Mediterranean Sea. We see these things, these signs that are coming together. But I continue, and I say in verse 8, it says, after many days thou shalt be visited, in the latter years thou shalt come. So this prophecy will take place in the latter years. Yesterday we had prophecies about the latter days, the gathering of the people of Israel in the latter days. Here we see the term the latter years. In the same chapter, later on, it says in verse 16, it says, It shall come to pass in the latter years that I will bring thee against my land. So the latter days, the latter years, these are terms that describes the times that we live in today. But let us see what else. What are the descriptions he's giving him? Ezekiel was in exile himself in Babylon, is prophesying not only the time when Jerusalem will be completely destroyed, but also he's giving prophecy about the time when the people of Israel will return to its land from all the nations, not only from Babylon, but from all the nations. So I read in verse 8, After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years they shall come into the land that is brought back from the sword. We are a nation of survivors of the sword from the Holocaust and the Inquisition, and throughout all the history we've been prosecuted, is coming together that is gathered out of many peoples, not only the return to Zion from Babylon, but the return to Israel in the last 100 years. And he says, upon the mountains of Israel. So he's giving the exact geographical place where it's going to happen, not in Uganda, not anywhere else, which have been a continual waste. This country has been a complete wasteland when the British conquered it from the Turks, from the Ottomans, after the First World War. But it is brought forth out from the peoples, and they shall dwell securely, all of them. So today we sit, we have had wars and terror, but in general, we sit and live good lives. So he's describing the nation and the land, and he's giving names of nations around us. These are exact details. And pay attention what it says in verse 11. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of undwelled villages, and I will go to them that are at west, that dwell securely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, to take all the spoil, and to take the prey, to turn their hand against the waste of the places that are now inhabited, against the people that are gathered out of the nations, and gotten cuts and golds and goods in the middle of the land. So he's also mentioning cities without walls and without bars and without gates. This did not exist back then. Up until the Middle Ages, when they invented the cannons and walls were not relevant anymore, every city had walls to protect itself. Today we don't have walls, we don't have gates, we don't have bars around our cities. And once again, we see so many details, exact details. We are also a country that lives in the middle of the earth. Politically, we are almost the 51st state of the United States. We're very strongly connected to the United States. Culturally, we are belonging to Europe. We participate in the European basketball leagues and the Eurovision. Geographically, we belong to Asia, and we are right on the border with Africa. Beyond us, in Egypt, it's already Africa. If so, we are exactly in the middle of the earth, and we have trade connections to all directions. And this is also fitting to the reality we live in today. So these are signs about prophecies that will come true in the future, but all this already exists today. This matches the political map of today. I want to conclude and say that there are many thoughts and interpretations to this prophecy. Many people say that Gog and Magog will be the same thing as the Antichrist. I personally don't see it this way. I think Gog and Magog is a war that will take place in the near future, and the Antichrist will be an empire that will rise afterwards, after Gog and Magog will get the strong hit. Europe will rise up. The European Union, the European trade will become very strong. These are other prophecies, but this is how I see it. And in the meantime, between, the temple will be rebuilt. This is also another prophecy in and of itself, about which we will talk later. Today we saw another prophecy that will come true. It hasn't come true yet, but all the details of this prophecy match the reality that we live in today. And this reality did not exist in the thousands of years up until the days we live in today. Another confirmation that our Father in heaven controls a history, and He said ahead of time what will happen, and we are in His hands. and no one can snatch us from his hand, Yeshua says. So let us be encouraged from these words, from this knowledge, and let us be strengthened for the day that is before us. Shalom.